so I'm going to show you now how to create this kind of image by this artist called Pablo Thecuadro, or however you say his surname. So if I move over into Photoshop, I'll show you that I've selected some images that I might be able to use to create that. I've got this image of a girl on a beach, and I've chosen her because she's got this sort of like reflection in the wet sand, very similar to the artist's image. I've also got a silhouette that I'm going to use to create this sort of cutout shape behind her. And because she's not positioned in front of a rock like this model is, I've also just grabbed this image off Google as well, which I'm going to try to use. So obviously these aren't like the best images, and they're not my images, which obviously you if you were going to be creating this, you'd use your own. But for the purposes of the tutorial, to show you what kind of techniques to use, they should work. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, whenever I'm working in Photoshop, the very first thing I do is I always duplicate the image that I'm working on top of, just so that if anything goes wrong or I'm not happy with the result, I can delete the upper layers and I've got this original unedited image then saved in case I need to go back to it at all. So that's the very first thing that I do. You can see I clicked right on the mouse and selected duplicate layer. I think the keyboard shortcut is Command J for that. Right, okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this rock in behind the girl, because obviously our model isn't stood in front of a rock, whereas the artist's model is. So moving over onto this image, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I've got this icon selected, the selection tool at the top of the left-hand menu, and then I'm basically going to select anywhere within this image, holding down the left button of the mouse, and then I'm going to hover over the original image, still holding down with that mouse button, and then lift my finger off in order to drop the image on top of the girl. Now, I don't want any of this sea in here or the sky, because I want to use this sky that's on the girl's image, because this is obviously more similar to the artist. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically cut out this rock, and then I'm going to adjust the size and the position of it. So whenever you want to cut out perhaps a more complex image like this, a complex shape, you can use something called the pen tool. You may already be familiar with this one, which is the quick selection tool. So if I show you how to use this one, where I've selected it on the left hand side, I'm just basically going to drag the mouse over the rock, and you can see it's sort of like doing the job for me, where it's selecting the pixels that are sort of similar in tone or similar in colour in order to select that rock. Now that's fine, but as you can see, as I go over some areas which are quite similar in tone, you can see it's picked up some of the sky here, and if I zoom in a little bit, you can see it's obviously got a bit of the sky here and the sea down here. You know, that's not what I want. I want it to be a lot more accurate than that. So I'm going to deselect, which is Command D on the shortcut on the keyboard, and I'm actually going to use this pen tool instead. Now what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to start down here on the horizon with the sea. I don't want this background rock, I'm just going to take this more sort of sandy coloured rock here. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to basically go around the outline of the rock, creating little anchor points as I go along, and you can see the line sort of joining up behind the pen tool as I work my way along the shape. Now I can zoom in a little bit more, which is Command and the plus sign on the keyboard, if I wanted to be super accurate. Now, for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm going to speed up a little bit, and I'm not going to be very accurate, but you can, what the pen tool does is it allows you to really zoom in and make sure you're not selecting any unwanted pixels, okay? I'm just going to speed up now and make this a lot more rough, but for the purposes of the tutorial, that's there for you to know about. So you can zoom in, you can make it as accurate as you need it to be. I'm just going to speed up a little bit along this area now. I'm going to drop down the side of this cliff here, and I'm going to select this area, going to move along the horizon line here. Now, this image I found on Google obviously has this boat in the front of it. I'm just going to pretend that it's not there. And I'm just going to go across it like that and then join up with the first anchor point there. So you'll see that the anchor points disappear and it becomes this solid outline. Very, very faint one, obviously, from this zoomed out angle. Now what I'm going to do, I want to change this into a selection path rather than a pen path. So over here on the layers palette, I'm going to pick paths, and then I'm going to move down into this circle with the dots around it, which is the third one in, and select that, and then you can see then it's changed that pen path into a selection. Now I'm just going to zoom out again, so it's going to be Command and minus on the keyboards. You can see that it's selected this rock. Now what I want to do is I want it to select this area up here, this negative space of the sky and the sea, in order for me to be able to delete it. So on select, I'm going to select inverse, and then you can see that it's taken away the it's now going around the border of the image rather than the rock. Okay, so I'm going to press delete on the keypad, and there you can see I've just got the rock left and not any of the sky or the sea that I didn't want. And I'm going to press Command D then to deselect. But this rock is obviously in the wrong place now, so we're going to adjust where it is and the size of it. So over on the layers palette, making sure I'm still on that rock layer, I'm going to reduce the opacity of it so I can see the girl coming through a little bit, and that's going to help me work out the size of the rock and where I'm going to place it. I'm now going to what we call free transform it, so it's here under edit, or you can do Command T as the shortcut on the keyboard, and you can see it's selected the edges of that original rock image in there. Now if I click left on the left button on the mouse pad and just adjust the corner, you can see that it is obviously making the rock all out of proportion and a bit skewed, which is not what I want. I'm just going to press enter for a moment, but I'm going to undo that. So over here on the history keypad, the history palette, sorry, if you're not familiar with this, this is a really good tool where you can go back a certain amount of steps. So for example, I could go back all the way to like this part here, or like where I'm drawing the anchor points, for example. But this is the way we did the free transform. As I said, it's made it a bit skewish, which I don't want. So I'm just going to go back to the opacity change. And now I'm going to free transform again. So Command T on the keypad. And this time, when I press the left mouse button, I'm also going to press Shift at the same time. And what that does is when I change the dimensions of it, you can see it stays in proportion. You can also see obviously a little bit of that image which is left on the right hand side, but for this it doesn't matter because I'm actually going to make the rock a little bit bigger, and I'm going to move it to where I think it needs to be. So I'm looking at this image here, thinking about how big I want this rock. That might be a bit too big actually. I'm just going to bring the size down a little bit. I think I'm going to go with it about there. Okay. Just this slightly, just so there was none of that leftover image coming through there. There we go, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to press enter on the keypad, and that's going to sit the rock just there for me. Now I need to bring the opacity back up to 100% again, and you can see obviously the rock is in front of the model, which is not what we want. I want the model to be in front of the rock. So I'm basically going to do the same thing again, where I'm going to select the background copy. So for moment, I'm just going to hide the rock for a minute. So I'm going to take the eye icon away. So the layer is still there, it's just it's not visible currently. I'm going to use the pen tool again, so making sure I've got that selected, and then I'm basically going to trace around the outline of the girl. So I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm going to go around the outline of her. Now again, if I was going to be spending time on this as you should, then you want to make it really accurate, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to speed up and make it really, really rough, okay? So I'm going to be taking pixels that I don't really want to take, but just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to try to make it a bit quick. going to try to move as I go along so I can see where I need to be. You know, hair can be quite a tricky thing in this sort of technique, because obviously she's got all these strands. There's just going to be some that I'm not going to be able to get, so I'm just going to go with the main bulk of the hair for now, and then if I want to add in any sort of artificial hair later, I can, and I can show you how to do that as well. Just going around the edge here, and then moving down a bit further again. Now, one thing you can do with the anchor points before you join them up, as we did with the rock, if you've got a particular curve that you need to try to encompass, if you hover over one of the anchor points, you can take them away by selecting them like that, or you can create this kind of tool which helps you make the curve. Now what I've done is, stupidly, I've clicked up here and it's joined up from that one down there. I meant to show you here on the flip-flop, but moving these allows you to create like a curve, so you can, like, you know, to be super accurate in terms of what pixels you're selecting, which ones you aren't. I'm just going to delete those last anchor points there because that's not what I want. So then my last anchor point is here, and now I'm going to join it up with my first one there to create that pen path again. So once again, I'm going to move over here into the paths palette, and I'm going to change it into a selection. Now I'm just going to zoom out. Now there's two things you could do. I could either inverse it and then delete the sky and the sea just like we did with the rock, and then what I would have to do is I'd have to move this layer above the rock layer so they would sit on top. Or the other thing I can do is I can copy it, and it would literally just copy what I've selected there. So just copy the girl, and then I can put it on a new layer. So I'm going to try that first. I'm going to do Command C, which is the shortcut for copy. I'm going to make the rock visible, making sure I'm on this layer, and then I'm going to do Command V, and you can see the girl has now appeared on top of the rock, and you can see it's because there's now an additional layer on top of this rock. So you can see that the girl that was selected on this layer, the selection I made with the pen tool, has now been placed on this layer, which is above the rock layer. You know, if the rock layer was above that layer, again it would be that way around, but obviously we want the girl on top, so we're making her the top layer. So there we go. Now if we zoom in, obviously you can see that I've got these areas here which don't make sense. So again, another thing you can do is you can use the pen tool. You can select the area that you want to make sure you can see the rock through the armhole behind her. Again, make it a selection, and then you can just delete it away, and then the rock will come through because it's the rock now that's behind the girl. Okay, so obviously you can tidy that up if you haven't been particularly accurate like I have. So there we go. So that's coming along quite nicely. Now, if I have a little look at this original image again, to me it looks like that this sort of jagged area in front of her looks to me like it's this image but flipped. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this background copy, and I'm going to make another duplicate of it, and I'm going to bring it in front of all the other layers. So this is the one that's on top now currently. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to free transform again, and it's selected all the edge of that image. And if I hover sort of next to that middle anchor point there, if I press Shift and then the mouse button, the left mouse button, I can turn it so that it then obviously twists around. I want it completely upside down. I want it rotating 180 degrees. So now the girl is upside down. I'm going to press Enter for that. Now, again, what I want now is the other layers underneath to be showing through. I only want sort of this kind of area to be shown, just like here on the image. Okay, so I'm going to use a mask layer here, I think. So I'm going to click this button, which is to add a mask layer on. Now, with a mask layer, anything that is white like this is visible, and anything that's painted black is hidden. So over on here, you can see you've got black and white over here. I'm going to select the brush tool, and let's have a look in terms of sizes. Maybe a little bit bigger to start. Go. Make sure the opacity is at 100%. I'm going to start with this hard edge brush, and then if I paint black on here, you can see that it is getting rid of that top image and the bottom images are showing through, particularly if I come a bit lower. Look, there you can see the girl starting to come through the right way up. Okay, it's harder to see over this side of the image because they're all the grey tones there. It's harder to see what's in front and what's not. So I'm going to use the large tool to begin with, just to get rid of those areas, like so. Now, over on the layers palette over here, you can now see, look, it's changed. It's no longer a blank white square anymore. You can see that black section is showing you where I've painted with black to show you what is being made invisible, basically, and allowing the bottom layers to peek through. Now, I'm going to try to create this kind of shape. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to reduce the size of my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to come a little bit lower down here. I'm just going to like make a bit of a basic pattern. Now, I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom. I'm just going to sort of create a bit of a shape like that. And I'm just going to try and fill that in. Like so. Here we go. Now, it can be hard to see sometimes here, you know, in these kind of areas, whether or not I've selected all that grey or not. So a way of checking that is to make the other layers invisible. And then you can see then that I've missed out some of these sections here, look. So I'm just going to make sure I've got those deleted, like so. And then I can make those layers visible again, like this. Now, on the image over here, she's got almost like a silhouette shadow underneath her here as well. We had here a shadow coming through on the wet sand, like so. So I'm going to stick with that. But if I wanted to create this into more of a silhouette like this, I'll show you how to do that in a little while. The other thing I want to show you with the masks is if I made a mistake, for example, and I deleted something that I didn't want to delete, all I need to do is come over here and click this button here, which switches the white to be the active colour. And if I click again, you can see it sort of like repaints it. And if I do up here to show you, you can also see it coming through here on the mask layer as well. Okay, so you can paint black to make something invisible and then paint white then to make something visible again. Okay, I'm just going to take a step back there because I don't want that obviously coming through on the sky area. Okay, what's next? Let's have a little think. I think I'll start to do this silhouette behind her now, this cutout. I'll show you how to do that. So I've got another image here, like I showed you at the start, where I've got this black silhouette of a girl against the night sky. Same as before, I'm going to make sure I've got the selection tool selected. I'm going to hover over the image, press down, then hover over my creation, and then drop it on top. And there's the silhouette. So First thing I'm going to do is, just as before, I'm going to use the pen tool again, and I'm going to go around the edge to select her, just the silhouette. Actually, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the magic selection tool this time because I think the contrast between these pixels, so the fact that this is very, very black and the background is very, very light, it will make the selection tool be quite accurate, whereas when we tried it on the rock before, it was picking up bits of the sky and the sea. So I'm just going to use the magic selection tool here. That's not too bad at all, actually. I think I'm going to use that. So again, I'm going to inverse it like so, and then I'm going to press delete on the keyboard, and then it's just left me with that black silhouette. So I'm going to deselect that with Command and D. Okay, I'm just going to zoom back out again. Right, so again, I'm not sure whether or not this silhouette is the right size or in the right position, so I'm going to drop the opacity down over here so I can see the girl coming through again, and then I'm going to free transform it so I can adjust the position of her. So I think it might be a little bit on the big side, so I'm just going to reduce it down. Again, I'm going to make sure I got Shift and the mouse button selected so everything stays in proportion when I move it. I'm going to position it about there, I think, because I'm going to have this gap here with the rock, just like there's a bit of a gap here. I might just move it over slightly, I think. About there. I might change the size of it a little bit more. That feels a bit better. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to press Enter on the keyboard again. This time I'm going to bring the opacity back up again. Now, firstly, obviously she's the wrong colour. I need it to be white to look like a cutout. So I'm going to basically fill this with white paint. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select the fill, the bucket icon. I'm going to make sure I've got white selected over here, as you can see, and then I'm going to hover over the black silhouette, and I'm just going to click with my mouse, and it's basically going to turn it into white. Now you can see over here that it hasn't done it for these pixels, and that's because where I hovered the mouse and then pressed the mouse button, it selected the black pixel. So all the black pixels that are touching it have now been made white. But obviously these pixels over here aren't black, and so the computer, Photoshop hasn't affected those because they're a different colour. But that's fine for me, because actually if you have a look at the original image, you can see there's a little bit of an outline going on, and we can see some strands of hair and things like that. So I'm actually going to leave that in because it kind of works with this effect. And in fact, I'm going to add a bit of an outline in a second, which I'll show you. So I'm happy with that, but the layer is in the wrong order because obviously I want the girl to be on top of the cutout like so, and in fact I also want the rock to be on top of the cutout as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this layer down below the rock. There we go, and you can see now that the rock and the girl now on top of that silhouette, which is what we wanted. Lovely. Right. Next thing then, I'm going to try to make a little bit of this outline going around the silhouette. So we'll start with that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see it a bit better. And I'm just going to use the paint tool for this. I'm going to zoom out a little bit there, that's a bit better. I'm just going to use the paintbrush tool for this. So like earlier, where we used it to paint our mask layer, this time I'm going to use it to paint like an outline. Now you can see the brush I've got selected is far too big for that, so I need to adjust the size of it to begin with. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit smaller as well. Maybe that to begin with will be fine. Now I wanted to kind of match the colours that are already here, so I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to select, there it is, the eyedropper tool, over here on the left hand toolbar, to select this colour here, which is sort of like an orangey, browny, pink kind of colour. I'm going to select there, and then you can see that this colour has arrived here in this palette. So going back to my brush, I've got a small brush selected. I've also currently got a hard edge brush, which I'm going to use to begin with. And it's normal, and the opacity is 100%. So if I start to draw with this, let's do it over here, near to the other bit of the outline, I can start to just paint in a few lines here and there. And you can see that it does look a little bit sort of primitive. So what I can do is perhaps adjust the opacity a little bit so that it comes out a little bit lighter and a bit less harsh. I can also use a soft edge brush rather than the hard edge one, and I'm just going to go up in size a little bit just to show you. So you can see that it comes out with the edges are a little bit blurred, a little bit feathered, and a bit softer and so on. Okay, so I would perhaps do that, you know, going around the edge a little bit here and there, sort of selecting areas to highlight, maybe around here at the chin, and so on. And you know, I've used this brown to begin with, but I might decide that actually that colour, I'm going to use a different one now to make it look a bit more realistic maybe. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool again. I'm going to select perhaps one of these more dark brown hair strands, and again you can see that this palette colour has changed again. So again, now when I go back to using the brush, if I place that on, you can see it's coming through a little bit darker and so on there as well. Okay, I mean, you know, what I've done here is like really naff to look at, isn't it? It's a bit primitive, but I just wanted to show you so you get an idea of what you could achieve if you know, took your time, if you adjusted the different sizes, adjusted the opacities and changed the brushes, you could get like a really nice effect like this edge of the silhouette going around here. Okay, let's have a look. What else can I show you on here? Let's think about also maybe making like a little bit of an outline coming here. So this looks almost like a ripped paper edge here. You could probably do the same thing where we've gone around the outline of that silhouette to make her stand out. You could also do it going around the edge of the upside down sky that we inputted. Now it's going to be really hard for me to see the edge of that because these greys are so close together. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide some of the other layers so that I can see exactly where the edge is. There we go. I'm going to make sure I'm on that layer, and then using the brush, and I'm still got this same pigment, the same pigment from the girl's hair, so it's going to match, and I'm just going to start to draw basically little bits on here. And you know, if I draw up here, it's not going to make any difference because that's the area that's masked off. You can see obviously some bits are coming through, so that's going to perhaps like help it have that ripped paper look, that kind of collage effect that is on the original image. Let's have a look at how that's looking. Let's make these other layers visible now and see what we're looking like, and zoom out a little bit. There you go, it's not looking too bad at all actually. Okay, so the other thing then is if you wanted to create this cut-out silhouette underneath her, what we'll do again for that is we'll use this girl and we'll use her outline as a bit of a mask. So let's have a think. I am going to I think I'll make another duplicate layer. Yes, we'll do that. That'll probably be the easiest way. It's probably going to be the least confusing. So I'm going to again duplicate that background layer. Press OK. You can see it's down here, you know, underneath the silhouette layer, which is not what we want. I want to bring that up to the top. Also, incidentally, you know, if you're getting confused with what's on each layer, you can also, if you right click, or is it right click? Hang on. Oh, there you go. If you double click, sorry, on it, you can rename the layer. So, you know, if I call that silhouette, for example, then I know that's the one with the silhouette. I mean, obviously, I can use my eyes to a degree, and I can see that that's the rock, that's the silhouette, and so on. But if your changes on each layer or are a bit more subtle and you can't see what you've done on each one, then there's a way of renaming the layers so you don't get confused. Anyway, I'm going to go back to this duplicate layer again. Now, what I want to do is the same as before. I'm going to free transform, so I'm going to do Command T on the keypad, and again I'm going to completely flip the image upside down, like so. Now I'm also going to bring it a bit lower so that I can cut around the shape of her. I'm going to press enter for now. I think what I might actually do is I might flip it so it's a mirror version of itself, because on here the silhouette is facing towards the left. So I'm going to try and do that. So on image up here, I can do image rotation. If I flip the canvas, I think it would be vertical for this effect. No, it won't. It'll be the other one. Let me go back one and then try that again. Flip horizontal. There we go. So now the girl is facing towards the left rather than towards the right. Lovely. Right, what I'm going to do now, for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use the quick selection tool. But if I was going to do this properly, I would use the pen tool like I've been showing you, just for accuracy. But just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use the quick selection tool. So it's obviously going to pick up some other pixels, which I don't want, but obviously I'm not too bothered just for the tutorial. That'll do. Now then, I've got most of the girls selected there. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select inverse again and then press delete on the keyboard. So I've literally just got this girl. Oh no, I selected the whole thing. Oh, silly me. I've done something really wrong. Where I flipped the horizontal, it actually flipped the whole document and not just that layer. I'm going to see if I can work out a way of doing that. It might be free transform again. If you can see on the history palette, I've gone back to where you can see the flip canvas horizontal there. Okay, that's, I've gone to the one step before it. I'm going to free transform again, so I'm going to do Command T, and let's see if I can do it this way. I don't think I can, I don't think I can. I think I'm going to have to keep her facing that way. Damn. I'll come back to that after. Let me carry on with what I was showing you. So I'm just going to press enter. Now, as I said, I'm going to use the quick selection tool. I'm just going to zoom in again, and I'm going to select the girl again. There we are. That should work for there. Again, zoom out, select inverse, and then delete on the keyboard. So there we go. The rest of my document is still facing the same way, thank goodness. Right, I'm going to press enter. Oh, sorry, deselect. Command and D for deselect. And then I'm going to do Command T for free transform. So you can see this is where the girl is here. Okay. Now I'm going to try to create this sort of like silhouette down underneath her here. So what I'm going to do is position her about there, I think. And the reason I'm putting her there is because on this image, this silhouette underneath her wouldn't actually be facing that way, would it? If it was a reflection of her, it would be facing this side of her, as a symmetrical reflection of her. But the artist has obviously flipped it. So actually, the girl does need to face this way. I shouldn't have actually flipped the whole thing. It makes more sense for it to be this way around, like the artist. Right, I'm going to pop her there because that's probably about where I would want it to be. And I'm just going to press enter. Now, basically what I want to do is I want to make sure that the area that I've got here, where you can see the sand coming through the sky, and on here we obviously got the wet sand coming through, is more in the shape of this girl. So I'm going to hide all the other layers to begin with, and I've just got this masked layer and the layer I've just created visible. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back onto the masked layer, and I am going to paint in white. Making sure I've got my brush, hard edge, make it a little bit bigger. That'll do. So when I paint in now, sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to paint in here. Why is that not working? Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong layer. Right, let me go back again, making sure I'm on the mask layer, not on that layer. If I paint in here now, why is that still not working? Oh, I also need to make sure I'm not selected on that image. I'm selected on the actual mask itself. Okay. Oh, opacity 100% as well. There we go. So I'm just going to try and follow the edge of that girl's shoulder, like that. Okay, and I'm going to switch it around now to black, and I'm basically going to paint over the girl. Now I'm not going to be able to see currently what that brush is doing because it's the layer underneath that it's having an effect on. Okay, I'm just going to hopefully get all the pixels, and I'm painting it in black so that it then becomes visible, or invisible, sorry, invisible, and the layer underneath will show through. So I'm just going to take away that top layer to see what that's looking like, and you can see I've kind of got that sort of silhouette of her there. If I put her back in, it's kind of looking accurate. If I zoom in a bit, you will see, oh sorry, if I zoom, come down, and then use a much smaller brush, even smaller again actually. I'm going to use that black still. I'm just going to go around the edge of her like that, try to get that hair effect coming through, making sure I'm right to the edges where I need to be. Bring it down even smaller, maybe bringing in a few hair strands to suggest the flow of her hair a bit more there, for example. And then if I hide that top layer again, here we go, you can see the silhouette coming through. Okay, now I do think that bit of grey there is cutting off her foot a bit much, so I'm going to flip back to white. I'm going to raise the size of the brush. Oh sorry, no, I'm in the wrong one. I need to be in black, don't I? And I need to, there we go, bring that coming through as well. There we go. Just going to zoom out again. Oh, sorry. There we go. Make that a bit bigger. And then I'm just going to make all the other layers visible, like so. And the bottom one as well. Oh, I don't want that one anymore. I don't want that one visible. What I can do with this layer, I can either just keep it invisible, or if I decide that I don't need it anymore, I can drag it down here into the trash can to delete it, like so. Although sometimes doing that, you may decide later on that you needed it, so I would probably avoid doing that until right at the very end, or just keeping it invisible anyway. And there we go. I don't think I've done too bad a job. Perhaps the only other thing I would change really with these images to make it look a little bit more like this artist is you can see that this sky and bottom half down here, so the flipped sky, has got a lot of blue tones in it, whereas these don't. So something you could do is give the overall image like a bit of a filter. So for example, up on here, I can select photo filter like this, and it brings in this whole new layer like this called photo filter 1. And over here you've got some different effects. So we're currently on a warming filter, so it's made it look rather orange. I might decide to use like a cooling one. It makes it look very blue, obviously. You can adjust the density of that here, of course. I can make it look super blue, or just bring through a more sort of like a subtle blue. Or I may decide this is the wrong kind of blue. Let's try like another cooling filter. Let's bring up the colour of that. That's like a slightly different blue going on. Another cooling one here. And so on. Okay, so you can have a little play around with that. I'm actually going to bring that density down a little bit further. The other thing as well is, because this is the top layer now, this photo filter is being applied to all the layers underneath it. If I only wanted it to apply to a certain layer, I could, for example, bring it underneath that one. And now you can see that because this masked layer is on top, you can see that this area here is staying quite grey because it doesn't have that blue filter applied to it. Okay, but I'm going to just stick it on top for now. I'll drag it and put it back on top if it'll move. There we go. So there we go. I hope that's useful, and I hope you've been able to follow along okay. The last thing perhaps to talk through with you is just making sure that you save your image correctly. So up in File, I would go to Save As. The first thing I would do is save it first of all as a Photoshop document, like so. I will save it as Pablo 1. You can see it's got PSD next to it, which stands for Photoshop document, and I'm going to save. What that means is when I open up that document again, all these layers here will still be active. So if I decide that actually I still need to work on the outline of the silhouette or still make some changes in any way, I can open up that Photoshop document and all these layers will still be there, as will the history palette as well. Okay, but if I think I'm completely done, what I can do now as well is I can also save it as a JPEG. So I can go back over here and save it as a JPEG. And you can see now the end has changed to JPG there. That all looks fine. I'm going to save. And here sometimes the quality is less than 12. Sometimes you'll have it like down here, or usually around about here. You know, keep it as large as possible. You want to have your JPEG to be as good quality as you can. And I would probably also keep it as a baseline. And then press OK. And that's now saved as a JPEG as well. So if I go into my documents, you should see. Oh, I'm hoping it's saved now. There we go. I got Pablo 1. I've got the JPEG there and the Photoshop document there. So if I open it as a JPEG, you can see. Oh, it's opened it up in Photoshop. That's all as it was. There we go. I'm going to pause the tutorial now, and I hope that's of use for you.